All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. This is Web Wednesday, the show where we bring on some really cool people to chat about various web dev items. And today I'm really pleased to be joined again by Burke Holland, who is like a web developer and just general developer extraordinaire. And he's been on in the past to talk about, oh gosh, it was a web framework.
I think we did static web apps.
There we go. Yeah, we did static web apps, and you also hosted Anthony at one point to do the same.
I'm sorry about that. You had to go through that, man.
No, it was fantastic. It was wonderful. And so today we have him on to talk about containers. But before we get to that, Burke, just like in 30 seconds or less, who are you?
Oh, geez. Well, my very first memory, I'm a web developer by trade, and today I work on with the VS Code team. I'm an advocate on what we call Dev Cloud, which is like VS Code, and then all the things you can do with VS Code, including what you can do with GitHub and what we call remote development, which we're going to talk about today, and then even like where you might run your apps, like Azure. But sort of VS Code is the center of all those things.
That's fair. I love VS Code. It's probably the best thing that we've shipped in a very, very, very long time.
I agree with you, but I might be a little wrong. I don't know. They're paying my bills.
Maybe just a little bit. Maybe just a little bit. So let's start with I think the most basic of questions here. That if we're going to chat about containers, what is a container?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, so to explain this, we're just going to kind of back up a little bit.
Is this far enough back, or should I keep going further back?
No, that's perfect right there.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to back up. We're both going to back up. So if we roll back the clock a little bit, when we first got into virtualization, we had to virtualize an entire operating system to run, say, a web app. And really, you don't need the whole operating system. It's just a web app. You don't need the whole thing. And so Linux has this concept of containers, right? It's commonly referred to as Docker, but Docker is not actually a technology. It's not, containers is the underlying technology. It's part of Linux. Docker sits on top of that and sort of makes that easy to use. So what is a container? So a container is what we would call a virtualized file system. And so basically, it's like if you were to start a container and then look inside it, it would look like you're on a Linux system, right? You'd see the root folder and you'd see the home folder and you'd see etc and all of that. And that container just will run on any Linux server anywhere. And you can just run a bunch of containers, and all those containers run as if they are their own file system, right? So each container looks like it's its own computer, but it's not. But it's not the whole operating system, right? It's just sort of the application that you need to run. This is a really hard idea to wrap your head around if you've never used containers, because that just shouldn't work. That shouldn't work. That shouldn't be possible. And I still don't know exactly how it is possible. I just know that it is. And we'll look at it today. You'll see it in action. And once you see it, if you don't get it, it'll click immediately. And you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, that's crazy. I can't believe that works.
Okay. All right. So it's basically that. So rather than that full virtual machine where I've got the operating system and I now need to manage and maintain and work with everything in that operating system, and then I'm going to install everything onto that, then my container can just have the little parts that I want on that container. So this might just have everything to run my web server, and this might just have my database and whatever it is. And now I can move those containers around, and I can put them into different places, and I can actually get like that portability and get that write once, run anywhere, because it's not my code that's running on the machine, it's the container that's running, and all my code is running inside of there.
That's exactly right. And I used to explain it kind of like, an exe. It has your code in it and all of the stuff that the code needs to run. And then you just sort of like send it out and somebody double clicks on it and it works. So a container is kind of like that same thing, but for web apps. So you can imagine you just stick your web app in it, and then you just take that container and you deploy it to a server, and it just works. And of course, containers are much, much smaller than entire operating systems, right? They can be very small. And then in the container, you can add things you need. So if you need Python or you need Node, you just sort of add those things into your container and they're there. Again, kind of crazy magic. It's a wonderful time to be alive.
Is it just for web dev, or can I use it for other things as well?
No, it's not just for web dev. Yeah, you can do anything. They're commonly used for microservices, which is where you have, a bunch of different services that talk to each other. You'll hear people throw out words like Kubernetes. You probably heard that, which I was always like, what is that? It sounds like a child's learning toy, but it's what they call orchestration. So like maybe you have 100 containers running on 30 servers, and you need to be able to manage all those. Like what happens when one goes down? Can you restart it? And can you aggregate the logs and things like that? That's what Kubernetes is. It's just like a thing that sits on top that lets you manage all these different containers that you've got running all over the place.
So I don't need to know Kubernetes then if I'm going to get into containers.
You do not. I don't know a lick about Kubernetes.
Okay.
I just know how to say the word.
It's about all I can do. I think I might be able to spell it as
I don't think I can even
well.
do that. Yeah.
There is a question, and you might not know the answer to this because it does start to get into a little bit that underlying architecture. But Aga asked the question over on YouTube. A Linux machine shares the kernel Windows use, and my only guess would be WSL, because I know when WSL 2 came out that there was an update to Docker, but that's like my best guess.
Yeah, so this is a really good question. So Aga, the answer is on what does Windows use? I've got not the first freaking clue how Docker pulls that off on Windows. I do know that in the latest versions of Docker, you can go in and say, enable the WSL2 backend for Docker. And then, so for people that don't know what the WSL is, it's Windows subsystem for Linux, which is Linux running on Windows. And that's really sort of the preferred way to do it on Windows, is to run it backed by Linux. It's just faster on Linux systems.
Okay. All right, that makes a lot of sense, and I will say, speaking of things that I absolutely love, WSL. I do all of my development on WSL.
That's a magical technology. I mean, WSL really kind of is a container like running on Windows in this virtualized environment that you're in. So that's really, WSL is a good example of a container itself.
I could definitely see that, because you do then install the things that you need, like Python and Node and all of that.
And it looks like its own operating system. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Then you even how you access it. You can go then into File Explorer and basically access it like a share.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That sort of I think leads to the very next question, which is, so I'm currently doing all of my development on WSL. Things work really well if I'm doing that. Why might I decide to start doing my development with containers?
So I think, this is probably the point at which, I'm going to jump into the demo here and sort of walk us through the fundamental problem that containers solve for developers, right? Like, it makes sense to deploy an app in a container, but why would you, as a developer, develop inside of a container? So to do that, again, you have to back up a little bit to get the whole story. So to do that, Ryan, if you would throw up my screen there. There we go, perfect. And then let's just start over here on GitHub on this repository. So normally when you are starting to work on a project, the first thing that you do is maybe you fork it, or maybe you just clone it, right? Or you fork it and then you clone it, but either way you clone it. And so one of the things that we've done with VS Code is we've said, well, perhaps what if you didn't have to clone a repository to look at it? So that's sort of like the first thing that we're going to look at. So say open a repository from GitHub. I'm going to do that. And then we can choose, and you can see it's already got this one here because it's actually on my clipboard. So it knows.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's trying to help me. So it's going to open this up, and then you'll see it says GitHub over here. And when this opens, we'll see all of the files that are in this project. And we can look at them, of course, and, we're in VS Code, right? Like, this is the code that we're looking at. But the thing is, it's not actually on my machine. It's just on GitHub. And this is what we call a virtual file system. And so there's this idea that like a lot of times, like maybe you just want to pull open a README and like make some change here, right? And then you want to preview it, and you want to do that locally. And do you really need to clone a repo to do that? And then you can come back and you can see it says your changes will be committed directly. There is no staging and pushing. There's just, update the README.
By the way, I just want to highlight, I appreciate you're just as imaginative as I am when it comes to demos, that your some change is some change.
Yes, all my changes are some change.
Yes.
That's all they ever are. Or it's like just D or S.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the first thing that I wanted to show everybody, was that you can do that. And that's powered by there's an extension called GitHub repositories. GitHub repositories. So right here, remotely browse and edit any GitHub repository. So you want to check that out. That is very cool. Now, in the case of this project, like, let's take a look at what we need to run it. So first of all, it's a Python project. Is that okay, Christopher? Is Python?
Yes. Python is good. Yeah, okay. I've done a little bit of Python. A couple of people may have seen some stuff I've done on Python.
I've heard you did a video series that kicked off 1,000 other video series here at Microsoft. All right, so if we were going to run this in the README, it says that we need to clone the repo. Well, we haven't done that. Open the app, select reopen in container, and okay, we're going to get to all this. So the thing is, like, if we were to open a terminal here to try to install dependencies or do whatever, you'll notice
like a pip install.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. To do a pip install, when the terminal loads, like I don't have, and in fact, VS Code just loads my home folder because it doesn't know. It's like, I don't even know where you are because this is not on my machine, and so I can't run it. Right? There's no running it locally. So at this point, we need to clone it in order to continue working on it. So we would clone this. So we would click down here. I'll do that again in the corner where it says GitHub, and that's how we know we're looking at the files on GitHub, and continue working on. And then we're going to do clone repository locally. This second one has to do with remote containers, which we'll get to in a second. But for now, let's just pretend that we're going to clone it locally like we might normally do and slap it right in there. Okay, perfect. And then we'll just open it here in this window. Okay, so now this thing is opened locally. And if we open our terminal here, we should be able to, install the dependencies and actually run the thing. So I'm going to do, I think it's pip. Yeah, that's it. Look at that. I love ZSH. It's magical stuff. That's auto suggest right there. So I'm going to install the requirements here for this with pip. Maybe. I actually haven't tried to run this project on this computer, so we'll see whether or not this works at all.
I have faith.
I think it did.
Yeah.
And then I think to run this, it's just Python app.py. No, it didn't import Flask. All right, so now I have a problem. All right, the problem is that my computer isn't really set up to run this project. And I don't know why, right? And so this is kind of the conundrum that we get into as developers, is that we clone a project and then we end up in some situation like this where it doesn't work, and it's because our environment isn't set up right. And this is particularly true for Python. I'm picking on Python a little bit, but it happens everywhere.
Hey, look, node modules. I don't want to hear it.
Right. Fair enough. But it's one of those things where it's once you get the project running, it's fine. But there's this big gap between the time that you clone it versus the time that you're actually effective running it. And I on Fridays, I work on our VS Code GitHub pull requests and issues extension. And it took me the first 2 Fridays to get that project running because of just some crazy permissions issue on my own machine that I could not sort out. That's a TypeScript project, right? It's not that complicated, but it just goes to show what a prescient issue that is, right? Everybody knows about it.
And I actually I want to go like one step further with that, because it like, you're an experienced developer, you're a senior developer. This can really be an even greater struggle for somebody who's a junior developer, maybe somebody who's brand new to the team, brand new to the project, because now they have to go through all of those setup steps and have to battle all of that and so forth. And a lot of times, like, everything that needs to be done either isn't documented, or based on what you had on your system, maybe it just doesn't work, and so that just it impacts productivity, and can also just just impact a person's happiness, because they're spending all of this time struggling, and they start doubting themselves, and it's a downward spiral.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of this whole like works on my machine joke that's been around for so long. It's like, it works for me. I don't know why it doesn't work for you. That's your problem. And so now we're going to get into containers, because the idea behind remote containers is that if you develop inside of a container, then you can actually semantically describe your environment and then ship that environment to other people. Okay, so how does that work? Well, we need a couple things before we can do this. So one of the things that we need is Docker, and I've got that running here, although it wants me to update it. Hopefully that won't be a problem. Cross his fingers. So we need Docker to run containers, first of all. And then we need the remote containers extension. So just remote containers. Everything in VS Code is an extension, because we don't want to ship you some giant install that contains a bunch of things you might not ever use. But 5 million people, all right. So once we have this, we need to add a Docker file to our project so that we can define the container. But the problem, Chris, is that I don't know anything about Docker, not the first thing. So I don't know how to add a Docker file. So we've tried to make this very easy for you. So once you install remote containers, you can do these add development container configuration files from the command palette here. And then it will look at the project, and it's smart enough to know, well, it's a Python, probably a Python project. But if it's not, we've got a bunch of different containers. So if you do show all definitions, you can see there's a complete data science setup. There's all kinds of stuff. There's I don't even know what this stuff is down here. What is Puppet? I don't even know what that is.
I don't know.
Look at all this crazy stuff. Vue. There's a container just for Vue. Okay, that's kind of cool. All right, so anyway, so we've got Python. We're going to select Python, and then we're just going to take the three. Christopher, you're a more Python person. What version do I need?
Honestly, 3.9, 3.10 is fine.
Okay, so we'll take that one.
220, 221, whatever it takes.
And then it asks us about Node, because I guess a lot of Python developers are also using Node. So it's like, do you want to also install Node in this container?
That could be because if you're doing any front end framework, you're going to have something that's going to be using npm, because most everything is done with package.json these days. So that might be why it's asking about Node there.
Okay, so we could take Node, but we're just going to say no for now. And then this is kind of cool. This is new, where we have a bunch of features that you can install. So a lot of people want the GitHub CLI, and you can just check that, and then we'll install that in the container for you. You can install Java. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. I know there's a Java person out there that is very angry at me right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Java jokes. All right, and then we'll say okay. And what this will do is it will create for us this new folder up here that says .dev container. And then inside of that, we have two files. One of them is the Docker file that looks really scary, right? So let's close this, because that's terrifying. I don't know what's going on there. Instead, let's hang out here in this. This is a JSON configuration file. And if we look through it, it's basically stuff that we just selected, right? So you can see it's looking at the Docker file. It's using this version of Python. No, we're not going to use Node. And then let's keep going down. What's all this stuff here? All of this stuff are settings that you really should have on in Visual Studio Code for the best Python experience. Now, how on earth would you know to turn these things on? Well, you wouldn't unless you did a bunch of Googling and copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, right? So we're trying to set you up for success here. And then if we keep going down, you can see the extensions. And so we're automatically going to include the Python and Pylance extensions for you in the container, right? So we're basically customizing a Visual Studio Code for you for this environment. And then you can see we added the GitHub CLI. All right, so how do we run this thing in a container? Well, for the astute, you might have noticed I got a notification down here that said, do you want to open this in a container? And I dismissed it, so it's gone. But fear not, we can do rebuild and reopen a container. So let's do that. And what? Oh, you know what? Because I have it open. I have it running over here. So let's just... Visual Studio Code is too smart. It's like, oh, you have it running in this other window. All right, so we'll do it here. So Visual Studio Code's going to refresh, and this thing's going to kick off and build this Docker container for us. And you can see that that's happening here. And then we could look at it if we wanted to see what was actually happening here. But again, we've already discussed, I don't know anything about Docker, so I don't know what it's doing, right? It's just doing, and I don't need to know anything about that. That's kind of the idea here. So Chris, we'll have to figure out what we're going to discuss while the build takes.
Well, first of all, we could discuss Christopher, not Chris. But the second thing,
for the millionth time.
But the second thing is it downloading all of the stuff from the interwebs? Is it pulling it locally? Like, where's it getting the stuff that it needs to build that container?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's pulling it from Docker Hub, right? So
okay.
In the Docker file, it defines an image. And actually, is it? That's a good question, because we maintain these base images for you. And now I'm curious.
It's pulling it from somewhere.
I think it does pull it from Docker. Oh, we have our own, apparently. Looks like we have our own repository, but it's pulling it from there. No, we're not going to install the extensions for Docker. So now we have a, this looks like it finished. But it's still going. But you can see here it says that we're inside this Python 3 dev container, right? So we're no longer editing locally, we're editing inside a container, or what we would call remote. We've remoted into the container from VS Code, which is why we call it remote containers. That's where that name comes from. The Python, I don't know, should I say revert? What do I do here?
I would install Pylance.
Install Pylance?
I like Pylance.
Okay, it's installed. Reload the window to activate. Sure. I don't know what'll happen. We're doing this. This is real life. We're just going to do this. So now we have to restart the dev container. But here's the thing. It should be faster this time because we already built it, right? So it already So it already downloaded it. So it's smart enough to know. It just spins it back up. So after that first build, subsequent reloads are much faster. All right. So we're inside a container. And when our terminal comes up, you should notice that this looks like a little bit different. Not that you paid great attention to my terminal before, but it did not look like this. Okay. So first of all, my name is not VS Code, right? That's the user the container runs under. You
like the product so much you changed your name to VS Code.
It's actually not a bad idea. I mean, that would be a hard act to follow. But let's look inside the container, and you can see here's my project here. Like if we were to look at the root of the container, it looks like it's a full Linux. It looks like it's my Mac, but it isn't. If we look in the, let's look in the, what do we got here? USR folder. No, let's look in the home folder. Yeah, so you can see VS Code's the only user inside this container.
Right.
So this is a container. We're attached. We're inside of a Docker container, and our project's in here. Okay.
I'm going to pause real quick here because there's two questions that I think are appropriate at this point. So the first is from YouTube, Secure Coding Development, and the question is, do you know the procedure to modify the file system inside the container, or maybe it's just not a good idea to be modifying that file system?
No, you absolutely can. I mean, modifying to a degree. Like, what do you mean? Like installing new things? Changing the user account that it runs under, like adding new user folders, adding directories, mounting additional folders from your local machine into the container. All of that stuff is possible.
Okay. Now, would you want to do that by updating the Docker file so that way it's then just always there? So if I give this to somebody else, now all of those changes that that I would have made manually are now in the Docker file, so that way they'll have them as well.
So it depends on what you're trying to do. Like,
okay.
So you can do anything in a Docker file. Okay, so that's let's just get that out in the open. Is that there are people that really understand Docker and they feel very comfortable here. And they can make it do anything they want. I'm not one of those people, right? And it's very easy to break your container. And so again, I'm going to point you back to this abstraction. And so for instance, like if we wanted to take and mount another folder from this computer into this container, we could do that in the Docker file. Or we could just come down here and say mounts right here, and we could specify a source, maybe that's, my home folder, and then dev, and then some project, and then we could specify a target, and that would be, our workspace, and then we could, the type is a bind mount, and then when we rebuilt the container, this folder would be loaded into the container. So in that way, we've modified the file system.
Okay, I dig that.
Okay.
And then the next question, and I'm going to genericize this a little bit, is Jose Camilo over on YouTube asks for Python development or for Node development as well, because I think it would still apply as well, would working with the container then be a replacement for virtual environments in Python or for Node modules in Node and JavaScript?
Yeah, Node doesn't really have the same concept of environments like Python does. So I'm going to punt on this one, Jose, and say that I don't know. But I do know that like if you do a data science environment and you open that up, you're going to have a base Conda environment in there by default, right? So that's what you're going to see. And if you had other environments that you might create inside of that container. So I actually think environments is another abstraction inside of the container. It's another level of almost, what's the word? Compartmentalization of environment.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Cool.
So no, it's not a replacement. It's what's the word? Something that you use in addition to. Okay. All right. So Chris, defer. You haven't let me get to. I recovered. I was in a complete nosedive there and I pulled out of it the last minute. So here we need to install the requirements, and actually it would be kind of cool if we didn't have to do that. Like people didn't have to do that. Like it would just work. So we can just comment out this line here and then let the container do it for us. And there's this whole life cycle inside of containers. There's like post start, post create, post startup. There's life cycle methods that you can look in the documentation and follow and do different things. So one of them is we can install the requirements. So let's do that, and then let's rebuild our container. So again, we could have installed these requirements manually, but it's just nicer for people down the road, because the idea is that I could get this project and do nothing whatsoever, right? I don't even want to install, I don't even want to run a pip install. Just do everything to get the project so that it's ready to be run. And you can see it's doing that. It's running a pip3 install here.
That was actually going to be my very next question, and I think this sort of answers it, is when you do that rebuild, like if you've just made one incremental change, which is what you did there, it doesn't have to throw the entire container out and start all over again. That it's smart enough to go, okay, cool, I've already got this container, let me just now apply the updates that you made.
Yeah, exactly. And Docker, that's one of the big advantages of Docker. And even if you were to modify the Docker file itself and say add a new piece of software and then deploy the container, it doesn't actually, Docker works in layers, right? And so it knows that a certain layer has changed and it only pulls that layer, which makes containers a whole lot faster. So we're getting in sort of the meat of Docker, but yes, Docker is very good about applying incremental changes and not rebuilding your whole world every time. Okay, so I hope that worked. You know what? No, don't ask me again. So now, will this work? Now, What is going on? Do I have a wrong version of Flask or something?
No, you might.
No, I just don't know.
No.
Like Flask?
No, that's good. I'm trying to remember. You might need to set an environmental variable.
Yeah, that's strange.
Try updating that to maybe Flask 2.
Flask 2, like 2 dot. Anybody know what the latest version of Flask is?
I don't. Honestly, I'm such a terrible developer when it comes to best practices. I always just simply just list the package in my requirements text file. I basically never pin it to a version. Just
you see this?
YOLO. Yeah. Yeah. I'm such a terrible developer. You want so you didn't want Python app py, you wanted Flask run.
Oh, is it? Well, no, because I don't really.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you wanted. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Positive. Flask run.
No, see, yeah, it should do this.
Rerun your pip install.
All right, let's do pip3 install requirements.txt. I don't think I need the user flag. Boom.
And then now Flask run.
It's not gonna work. What about Python?
No, you don't need Python. I'm telling you.
That's so weird. This is crazy because this was
scroll
working.
up real quick.
Chat, what are we doing wrong?
Try Python 3 at py, but again.
Oh, that's what I guarantee you. That's what it is. No.
I'm telling you. Do me a favor. Type in export.
Export.
All capital letters Flask _ app equals app.
Okay.
Enter. And then Flask run.
That's such a weird, strange error.
Okay. Open up your app py file.
Let's take a look.
Where is it failing? App py. It's giving you all sorts of squigglies. Hold your mouse over that def. Oh, it's just giving you pylint issues.
Yeah, it's linting. It's almost like it's an issue with Flask. Am I crazy, or is that?
I mean, do me a favor. Scroll up real quick. Just line 5. Scroll up.
Scrolling up.
App equals Flask name. Hit a couple of carriage returns. Just hit return. And then just type in the word Flask. I just want to see if you get any form of IntelliSense, and you're not. Although you don't have... Install Pylance.
Pylance. We're coming back.
Oh, somebody says that the problem is they run Python 3.1. So let's do this. Go back to your Docker file.
Okay. Oh, you want to change the version?
Yeah, so change that to 3.8. And then you have to go into the Docker file, into the dev container JSON as well.
change it here. 3.8.
Yeah, 3.8.
All right.
And then do a rebuild.
That's really weird. What does that mean? Like Flask is busted in the latest version of?
3.10 might just be a beta version of Python.
Oh, just too green?
Yeah.
I used to have this problem with Node all the time when back in the day, before it was super, it's very stable now, so it rarely does this. But back in the day, you just never know what you were going to get when you change versions of Node. Entire things would stop working.
Yeah, that and that happens, of course, with I think anything.
That is true.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see if this person is who made this suggestion. Who is this?
This is Smab UK over on Twitch.
All right, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing whether or not this is the real deal.
Chugga chugga chugga.
So we're having to download all over again. And just by the way, VS Code installs this little server inside the Docker container, and that's how it works. So it actually VS Code communicates with this little server inside, which is why it looks like you're in VS Code, but you're actually not. I mean,
Right.
you are in VS Code, but you're talking to a server inside the container. It looks like you're in the container, but you're not. That's what I meant to say. I can't get my act together.
By the way, Code with Sean, which hi Sean, is saying that it's revenge for you calling me Chris.
That's true. Why? I don't understand why that's a unforgivable offense, but apparently I crossed a line. Okay. All right. Now look, we're collecting Flask. That's got to be a good thing.
There we go.
Now listen.
All right.
You're
Now
going to tell me to run Flask.
run.
I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
I don't believe you. I'm going to do Python app.py. Oh my gosh! They fixed it.
There we go.
Unbelievable.
Thank you very much to Smab UK.
Thank you, chat. Y'all are so great. All right. So now let's click on it, and we'll see it running in the browser, or we should. And we do. All right. So it's not super complex. It's just reading in a data file. But so this looks like it's running locally here. It's actually not. It's running inside the container, but it uses this technology called port forwarding, where we forward stuff from the container out to your local machine so that Pylance, geez, let me live my... There should be an option that just says, let me live my life. Okay, so we struggled. But look, we have this running, so now we just need to get this into GitHub so that nobody else has to go through this. And so to do that, we're just going to check this stuff into GitHub. So what did we make?
We should really just spin this, because this is exactly why we have containers, because we struggled in trying to get everything fixed and get the right versions and everything else. And now that this is done, the next person that goes to grab this, they'll have that Docker file, that container that is all set and ready to go. See, we did this on purpose. We did this as a teaching moment. This is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
This is intentional.
Yes.
No, but you're exactly right. I mean, this is exactly the scenario that we're trying to avoid. All right, so let's push this thing up into GitHub.
Quick, before anything else goes wrong.
All right, we're there. So let's go over to GitHub. And so what are we? GitHub.com/me/learn. Oh, man. I think it was, I can never remember. We'll just do it the hard way. Don't judge my commit graph there. Okay. So here's our repo. We just pushed our dev container. It's in here. All right. So now, in theory, the next person that would clone it, they could just open the container, and it would just build a container. It would just work for them. Okay. But there's sort of more to what we can do here. And one of the things that we added for people is something called github.dev. So if you're on any repo, you can just hit the dot, the period key on your keyboard, kind of like you would do code dot in a terminal and then to open a project. And it opens what's essentially VS Code running in your browser. And it's very much like the experience that we had with remote repositories, where we were looking at the files on GitHub and we can browse them and we get the syntax highlighting, but we can't actually run them, right? There's no terminal here, but this is free. Anybody can use this, right? So on any GitHub repo, any of y'all can go and use github.dev today. And you can do pull requests and all sorts of things right from here. So you can edit, maybe make some edit here. And then you can make a pull request, create a branch, right? So you can do all that here. That's great. But if you wanted to get a terminal running here, so like that's not what I wanted to do. Let's open a terminal. Let's see, terminal, focus to terminal view. And again, we don't have a terminal because we're in a web editor. And so we have to continue working on. And then here we get two different options, one being the clone, but then the new one being we have access to CodeSpaces. So we're going to choose this latter one.
What is CodeSpaces?
Yeah, so let's talk about that while we're spinning this up. So CodeSpaces is what we just did locally, but with the container part running in the cloud. It's the exact same thing, but instead of the container running on your machine, it runs in a data center somewhere in Azure. And so the nice thing about that is obviously you don't have to have Docker installed. You don't even have to have a high-powered machine. Actually, all you need is a web browser. Technically speaking, something like a Chromebook, which is great for browsing the web, but not a whole lot else, is all of a sudden is great for writing code because you have somebody else, running your container. So that's what CodeSpaces is. It's a hosted version of what we just did on my machine. And it's building the containers, running through the same steps that we just ran through locally. And coincidentally, it uses the same configuration that we created. So it's using this dev container, which we defined, to build this container and run it up in the cloud. So Python 3.8 looks good. I think it's done. That seemed awful fast.
It did. Scared. Azure does have a faster connection to the internet than you do, so that might...
That doesn't seem fair. All right, so it should have installed our dependencies, right? So can we just do... this work?
In theory?
Yeah. So
look at that.
Right. Well, so we didn't have to go through any of what we just went through because it's all been defined and encapsulated. All the suffering has been abstracted away. And we can still run this web app in the browser, and it does the same thing, right? It forwards this thing out. Of course, the URL is a lot uglier. I don't know if people can see that. How do you zoom on is it control? Yeah. Does that work? Oh, it does.
Yeah. Look at that.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So anyway, and you can actually, debug and put breakpoints and all that stuff will work inside of CodeSpaces.
And I really love, it's such a little thing that Burke didn't have to configure anything there, that container is running in the cloud. It's running on a data center somewhere else. Port forwarding is automatically enabled. He didn't configure anything for that. He just simply started the server. It automatically then turned on port forwarding, and he was able to hit it, and away he went from there.
Yeah. And that's a good point. So it detects that stuff. And then also, like, Chris, you can't see the Christopher, you can't see this right now. But if I go to port privacy and select public, right? So I'll just take this. Can I just paste this in the chat? How do I do this? There's only private chat. No, I can do comments.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Yeah, if you go to comments, you should be able to... No.
I can't. Here, I'll paste it.
Yeah, if you put it in a private chat, I can...
You can paste it over, and people should be able to load this up, right? It should now be public on the internet, and hopefully I won't regret that. I don't think it's read-only.
It's just a JSON file.
It's just a JSON file. What could go wrong here? But you should be able to load this up for yourself and access my container, which is really nice because you can share it with people while you're in development. We should also point out, Christopher, that live share works here. And so if I wanted to say invite you, I don't know if you have VS Code running.
I don't.
But you actually don't need it. How is that possible? So let's share and do a live share session. So I guess I'll sign in with my GitHub account.
And it looks like there is like you need it apparently public didn't work. Or at least not on that URL it didn't work.
It didn't work?
Yeah.
I don't believe that. Wait a minute, did I not set it? Hold on. Where is the terminal? Focus the terminal. Command J, there it is. It says it's public. Public? Public? Huh. Maybe we need to open a bug? Is it the same URL I gave you? No, it's not.
No, it's got a -5000 in it.
Look, so it generates a different URL. Okay, good to know, Burke. Do your demos properly. Try that one.
Let me hit this. Let me just try it first. Yeah. Yep. There we go.
That works. Okay, cool. So let's try live share, man. So I've started a live share session, and what is this? Copy collaboration link. So I'm gonna send this to you, and I want to know what happens when you click on this URL. Because I have a feeling I know what happens, but I don't remember.
Yeah, it opens right up in a browser. I've got VS Code here. I could actually let me just boop share window.
Share your screen.
Get started. There we go. And then I think, yeah, my screen is sharing. So Ryan, if you want to just take mine real quick.
I should just reject you.
There you go.
So, okay, so this is great. We just get to segue into the next part of the demo. So what's really interesting here is that you also are not using VS Code, but you're not using github.dev either. So what are you using?
I've got a little thing called vscode.dev. And I want to highlight here real quick that the browser window that I'm using, I'm not logged into GitHub. So like nothing up my sleeves. I'm not logged into GitHub on this. I don't even think I have code installed on the system that I'm currently streaming from. So yeah, so this is just vscode.dev. So what is vscode.dev? What am I seeing here?
So vscode.dev is similar to github.dev in that it's Visual Studio Code in your browser, but it's not tied to a GitHub repo, right? So anybody right now, yes, you're modifying my my app.py file. I see it. Live share is, that's wrong. Live share is awesome. Yeah, it's Visual Studio Code running in your browser, but not attached to a GitHub repo. So you can go there right now, vscode.dev. And while we're doing this, we should show people some cool stuff that they can do with vscode.dev that is quite interesting. So you can actually open a local project from your browser. So if you do, I think it's from the command palette, if you go to open project, no, maybe you need a blank vscode.dev window. You should be able to do that. And it should ask you, open a folder.
Okay.
And then you can just pick a folder off your machine, any project, and load it up and do local development right here in your browser. So that's one thing you can do, with the caveat that only works in Chrome and Edge, because Safari and Firefox do not support the file system API. Are you going to do CodeSwing?
Yeah, just because to give me something to do in here. Yeah, I love CodeSwing, because then that way I can create 3 files real quick. So for anybody who hasn't seen CodeSwing, which I love CodeSping. So I'll just do it in that directory that I created. And let's go. I'm such a huge Svelte fan, so I'm going to go Svelte and TypeScript. And now, like I've got a Svelte file that's now right here. And as I go in and make changes, Chris Topher, like that, then that just automatically appears right over there on my
You've
code
typed
screen.
that before. Like that just came out flawlessly. Yeah, CodeSping is so cool. And I honestly don't know exactly how it works because isn't there a compilation process for Svelte, or I guess you can just run it in the browser?
And there is, yeah. And so what it's doing to make its magic happen, I honestly don't know, but it's really slick.
Another cool thing about CodeSping is that if you go, you can add libraries. So if you go to the little icon up there,
I'm just going to install. The Svelte doesn't work in here. Oh well, that's
yeah.
okay.
So it's important to note that not every extension works because things that need access to your local file system aren't going to work in the browser. And extension authors can change their extensions to work, but VSCode.dev came out last week, so give it a little time.
Right.
But if you click on that, I think it's like the little add library icon up there, over to the one more over, I think.
Add library?
Yeah, and then you can do style sheet, and then I like to add like a CSS framework, like Bulma. So if you erase that, like you just type Bulma, and you
look
can
at that.
add it. Yeah.
And then I haven't done anything with Bulma.
Just the bottom one. And then you'll see it, right? Your style's already changed, and you have access to maybe like using Bootstrap or something. This is really nice for just quickly mocking up sites and pages, and that's CodeSping. It's very cool.
I dig it.
So that's cool. Here's something else you do. So go to your extensions, and what's a theme that you like, Chris Topher?
I honestly don't have a particular theme.
Can I recommend one?
Sure.
Go take a look at Fairy Floss. It's not going to be for everybody, but a lot of people like this. So you're just going to install it. You're not even going to check it out.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's bright. Okay.
It's very purple. All right. So you got Fairy Floss. So do this. Right click on that extension Fairy Floss and select copy extension ID. And then go up to your browser, your URL, not your browser, your URL bar, and in VS Code.dev and type /theme/ and then paste the ID in, right? And press enter. And of course, you've already got Fairy Floss installed, but what it does is it opens up, if you send this to someone, it will open up VS Code.dev with that theme, and then we give you a bunch of sample files so you can see what the theme looks like in a C++ file or in an HTML file. So it's a really cool way to like send cool themes that you find to people and share them with a URL.
I dig that.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
I dig that. We'll just go with HTML and TypeScript because those are the only two languages that matter.
Just delete everything else.
Yeah.
All right, so one last thing. Ryan, you can switch back to my screen. One last thing I want to show people.
We got about 7 minutes.
Oh, so wrap it up?
No, you got 7 minutes. You still got time to show a couple of things, but just, okay. 7 minutes.
So let's look at one here. Like this is one I look at a lot, but another thing you can do is you can come to any GitHub repository and you can, if you slap vscode.dev/ in front of it and hit enter, it will load up that GitHub repository inside of vscode.dev. Now, the first thing that you should be asking yourself is, how in the heck is that different from github.dev?
Okay, how in the heck is that different from github.dev?
It isn't, but that's not the point. The point is that I was able to slap vscode.dev/ in front of the URL and it opened the project. If that works today with GitHub, let me just throw that out there, where might that work in the very near future? The possibilities are endless. And so you might imagine that any place where you have files stored, you might be able to drop at some point VS Code.dev in the front of it and open it and edit it with VS Code.
So if you were using, say, Azure DevOps or...
Actually, that works today. So if you have... that's another thing that works today. You go to your DevOps repo and slap vscode.dev in front. It's in preview right now, so not all the same features as GitHub, but yeah.
Okay. I dig that.
Yeah.
I dig that.
So that's vscode.dev. And I think we've just about run the gamut, man. I mean, that's a lot of content.
That is a lot of content, and I do want to highlight one last thing about everything that you did with containers there, because I think this is really important. Is that by your own admission, you're not a containers expert, yet you were able to go in and just through VS Code be able to go, hey, I want this container. These are the things that I want in there. Go, and then you were able to like just intuitively make the couple of updates as well that needed to be made. So you don't need to know Kubernetes. You don't need to be an expert in Docker to start using containers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we do. It's probably a good time to promote my learn module that we have on this, which is not a URL that I have handy.
Developing inside of a container.
Yeah, that's it. Developing in a container in a learn module. So there's a learn module that walks you through this as well and shows you. It actually goes above and beyond and shows you how to do things like add software from the Docker file. So it shows you some of the more advanced things. Because one of the things about Docker and remote containers is that you have to know some stuff about Linux. Like, for instance, you have to know that if you do an apt-get install, you have to pass -y. Otherwise, the container will just hang, waiting for you to say, yes, you want to install this package. But you won't be able to see it, right? So it'll just hang forever. So it's a little things like that can hang you up as you go along. But another shameless plug, we've been working on some videos over at youtube.com/code. If you go to playlists, we are putting together a dev container how-to playlist where we're trying to show you, whoa, easy, buddy, that's me. How to do a bunch of different things that you might try to do in a container, like, modifying the path variable, adding a folder from your local file system. Maybe you got a mono repo that you're trying to work with, right? And so we've got a bunch more of these planned, but we're trying to answer some of those quick questions that people might have that come up as they go along that maybe aren't automatically answered by what Visual Studio Code does for you out of the box.
I dig it. Perfect. And people can find you on Twitter at Burke Holland. And you also do a fair amount on the Code TikTok, correct?
Yes, it is true. So I am on Twitter, but I'm not a huge fan of Twitter for reasons that we won't get into here. But you can find me on tiktok.com/@VSCode and then youtube.com/code. Subscribe there. We publish a lot of shorts. We love YouTube shorts and do a lot with that platform. And so you can find me mostly in those two places, TikTok and YouTube.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining. This was fantastic. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was fun. I feel like we did a better job than we anticipated showing the value proposition of dev containers.
Hey, we intended for that little demo to break.
We rehearsed for hours.
So we are here every week doing something web dev related. I'm actually off next week, but we're going to have Chloe Condon hosting Ro, and I cannot remember how to pronounce her last name, so I'm not going to mess it up. But they're going to be here talking about CSS. So definitely swing on by, say hi, because I think every web developer needs to spend a little bit more time doing CSS. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye, chat.